When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Under the Floor. User: NAMT563. Posted May 3rd, 1997.
I wasn't always a fuck-up. There was a time I was somebody, a promising academic, full ride to Penn, working on a PhD in linguistics. Dead languages, ancient scripts, cultural noise. I had a stack of journals with my name on them and a thesis about how Indo-European vowel shifts mirrored lost rituals in Mesopotamian burial routes. I still think I was right, but it doesn't matter now. Second semester of my final year, I herniated a disc moving a stack of books I shouldn't have touched. They gave me Percocet for the pain, then Vicodin, then more when I figured out how to work the clinic rotation. I quickly went from promising scholar to strung-out ghost in less than a year. That was 1995. 3 years later, I'm living above a resale shop in Altoona, teaching GED prep to hungover teenagers who could barely read their own names. No benefits, no prospects, just barely hanging on. That was where I was when the email came in. An old professor of mine, one of the few who still replied to me, said there was a family in central Pennsylvania, a homeschooled kid, scary smart, needing a private tutor. Big money, room and board included. I didn't ask too many questions. It was early January when I drove out there. The road wound past frozen cornfields and forgotten coal towns where everything looked like it had been thawed and refrozen for decades. By the time I reached the Caro property, the sun was bleeding out behind the ridgeline and the world was dipped in that blue-black twilight that always feels a little too quiet. The house itself sat at the end of a gravel drive, choked with dead oak branches, 3 stories tall and cobbled together from mismatched additions. It looked like a place built by people who could never stop rebuilding, like they were trying to trap time by walling it in. A woman met me at the door. She introduced herself as Mrs. Caro. Her eyes looked like they'd been red for years, not from crying, just worn out from everything. She was polite, but distant, told me I'd be working with her son Michael, said he was bright, but intense. Then she was gone. Michael met me after dinner, pale, polite, hair parted like a kid in an old photo, looked me straight in the eye, handed me a printed schedule, dot matrix, torn edges still hanging on, and pointed to the guest room like he owned the place. The schedule listed Latin, geometry, physics, and something called special reading. I asked what that was. He just said, "You'll see," and walked away. The first few days were strange but manageable. Michael wasn't just smart. He was the kind of genius that doesn't come from study. It came from somewhere else. He spoke Latin with a fluency that didn't sound learned. It sounded remembered, and he didn't ask questions. He made corrections. He told me the subjunctive form I used was anachronistic, and I wasn't even mad because he was right. I didn't see much of his mother after that. She left an envelope of cash on the kitchen counter every Friday and never came to check on us. When I asked Michael where his father was, he said, "Gone deep," like that explained anything. Every time I walked past certain hallways or old doors, I felt like I was being watched, but the feeling never stayed long enough to hold on to. On the fourth day, during the special reading block, Michael brought out the book. He pulled it from a locked chest beneath a loose floorboard in the study, black leather cover, no title, bound with some kind of brittle twine. The pages smelled like smoke and dried flowers. The writing inside didn't resemble any language I'd ever studied. The characters were slanted, broken, drifting across the page like something half forgotten. They weren't designed to be read. They were meant to be remembered. Michael placed the book on the table between us and said, "We'll start with this." I asked where he got it. "My father brought it back," he said, before he started hearing the voices. I don't remember what I said next. Probably nothing. That night, I flipped through the book alone. Someone had already made notes in the margins, sloppy red ink, half erased. In the bottom corner of one page, I found a symbol I recognized, a jagged shape like a shattered doorway. Veller, it was labeled. I remember it from an obscure reference in an even more obscure article, something I'd chased during my thesis. It meant the key, a passage, a threshold. I told myself it was just coincidence, that the pages were nonsense, but the deeper I went, the more familiar the writing became, not in shape, just in feel, like music I'd forgotten I knew how to hum. That's when the house started changing. At night, the lights flickered only when the book was open. The clocks in the study ran backwards between 2 and 3 a.m. No matter how many times I reset them, I started hearing footsteps in the attic above my room, slow, deliberate pacing, even though the attic door was nailed shut from the outside. One morning, the doorknob to my room was warm to the touch, even though the furnace was broken. Michael never reacted to any of it. He just kept reading, quiet, attentive, waiting for me to catch up to whatever he already knew. Then he asked me if I still used. The question hit me like a punch to the gut. No, I lied. He looked at me dead calm. "You will when the door opens." That night, I packed a bag. I told him I was leaving. The kid didn't argue, just said, "You were always going to help me open it. That's what I wanted." I tried to drive out at dawn. My car wouldn't start. I checked the distributor cap, the plugs, the battery. Everything looked fine. The road past the property, though, was gone. Not blocked, not snowed in, just gone. The forest had swallowed it, like the gravel had never been laid down. The landline phone, one of those heavy beige ones that always smelled like dust and old smoke, had no dial tone. The clocks were still frozen at 2:44 a.m. I found the last tutor's journal the next day. It was hidden in a drawer in the old upstairs study beneath a stack of yellowed papers. The cover was torn off and most of the pages were water damaged, but a few lines stood out in heavy pencil. The boy doesn't learn. He remembers. The book doesn't teach. It reminds. The seventh passage ends the hallway. I threw the journal into the fireplace. It didn't burn, just blackened, curled in on itself like something plain dead. That night, Michael placed the book in front of me and opened it to a page near the back. "We're ready now," he said. I didn't argue. I read. The seventh passage wasn't a paragraph or a sentence. It was a set of symbols scrawled in a spiral meant to be spoken aloud. The second I finished, the house shook. I felt the floor buckle beneath me like the foundation itself was recoiling. Somewhere upstairs, the attic door slammed open. Since then, I've stopped keeping track of time. The sun doesn't rise here anymore. Not really. It just fades in and out behind thick clouds that never move. I sleep when I can, but the dreams don't stop. They hum low and constant, like something beneath the floorboards is trying to finish the sentences I started. The pills barely dull it, but I take them anyway. I still teach. Michael still listens. Sometimes I think he pities me. Sometimes I think I died the second I stepped through the front door, and sometimes when I hear something breathing behind the walls, I wonder if I was always supposed to end up here, like this was the last line of some text I started translating years ago and never realized was about me. I don't know what the book really is, but I know this much. Whatever's in the seventh passage wasn't written by anyone who's supposed to be understood. And if someone ever hands you a job like the one I took, walk away. You don't want to remember what the key opens. Not all doors were meant to be walked through.
Subject: the flight recorder. User: Chew3ST3N. Posted January 22nd, 1999.
I didn't set out to be part of anything weird. I'm not that kind of guy. I do avionics diagnostics for a third-party inspection firm. One of those subcontractors the airlines hire when they're trying to stretch a plane's life a little longer than they probably should. We deal with junkers, aging birds with rusted teeth and tired wiring. Most nights, it's just me, a portable workbench and a portable tape deck under buzzing fluorescent lights. Anyway, a few weeks back, I was out at a storage lot in southern Illinois, clearing out old data units for a 1970s Lockheed L-188 Electra that had been grounded since Carter was in office. Plane wasn't even salvageable. They just wanted the hardware stripped before the whole thing got melted for scrap. That's when I found the recorder. It wasn't mounted, just sitting loose inside a hollowed-out panel behind the flight engineer's station. Scorched. The data tag had been sanded off. It looked deliberate. No record in the work orders. No mention of it anywhere, but I knew what it was. A CVR. Cockpit voice recorder. I should have tagged it and sent it up the line, but I didn't. Don't ask why. I brought it home and hooked it up to my reader. The first 30 minutes were nothing special. Two pilots going through a standard checklist, lots of crackling comms, a little small talk. One of them was talking about his girlfriend, about how he'd gotten her a ring but hadn't proposed yet. The other guy was teasing him, saying he should just do it already, stop being a chicken. And then they go quiet. Center, this is November 223. We're getting a weird reflection on the scope. 5 o'clock low, can you confirm? Silence. The co-pilot asks again, then a weird sound, metal rattling like something crawling across the fuselage. Then, and I swear to you, you hear someone breathing. Not on the intercom, inside the cockpit, like someone standing behind them breathing heavy through their nose. And the pilot says, real slow, "Who the hell is that?" That part stuck with me. Not panicked, not barking orders, just stunned, like his brain couldn't process what he was seeing. After that, things spiral. Altitude warnings start going off. The flight crew is scrambling through emergency procedures. They try to raise center again, trying to get a response from anyone, but it's just dead air. The captain says, "I think we've lost cabin pressure," but you can hear from his voice it's not just the pressure he's worried about, it's the fact that none of the instruments make sense. The heading indicator's spinning, the gyro's gone haywire, they're trying to rely on visual nav and failing. The co-pilot starts calling out landmarks, trying to get bearings. That looks like a lake, but we're over Kansas. Stuff like that. The disbelief in his voice is raw. The last clear thing you hear is the pilot, again, voice tight, whispering, "That's too many stars for down here." Then, silence. Not a crash, not static, just a soft fade, like the tape gave up trying to follow whatever happened next. I sat in the dark for hours, looping it. When I finally turned the recorder off, I didn't feel afraid. Not in the way you might expect. I just felt grief. Heavy. Like I'd eavesdropped on someone's final moments. People who never got to say goodbye, never got written down in a report, never got their names on a wall. The next day, I did some digging, traced what little I could. There was a Flight 223 listed in a pre-departure manifest from 1974, bound from Toledo to Phoenix. It was scheduled, but supposedly it was canceled. I found a short blurb in the microfilm from a local paper. Just a correction. Flight 223 did not depart as scheduled. But I found a woman as well. The would-have-been fiancée, and she's still alive. Still living in the same house. I called her and told her I was working on a historical piece about regional air travel. When I mentioned the flight number, she went quiet. Then she said simply, "He boarded." I watched him walk down the ramp. I waited an hour before the gate agent told me it was canceled. They wouldn't even admit he got on the plane. I didn't tell her what I had. Couldn't. I just asked if she'd ever found peace. She said she stopped waiting by the phone years ago, but some nights she still dreams she hears him fumbling with the keys outside the front door. I haven't decided what to do with the tape yet. feels wrong to keep it. Feels worse to hand it over to someone who'll shelve it in a basement file or worse, toss it. Maybe it's not solving anything. Maybe it's just about making sure they're not forgotten, that someone, somewhere, knows they were real, that they were scared, that they tried to come home. If you're the praying type, maybe say one for Flight 223. They never landed, but they didn't crash either. They just kept going.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.